Welcome to Conversations on the Coast, the Bay Area's premier author interview program. And today we're joined by Karl Marlantes. Now, he's here to talk about his second book, which is called What Is It Like to Go to War? And you may remember his first book. It was called Matterhorn, a novel of the Vietnam War, which was a bestseller, won a number of awards. Is it in paperback yet?
Yes, it came out in May in paperback.
Okay. And this book, What Is It Like to Go to War, appeared 2 weeks ago for the first time on the New York Times hardcover bestseller list. And we're hoping for a long life there.
Thank you.
And an upward movement.
Let's hope so.
This book tries to answer the question of the title. And it tries to answer it at a number of different levels, I think. The book is sensitive throughout to the fact, and a disturbing one when you think about it, the fact that our wars are caused, maneuvered into by old men and fought to the death by youth. And the youth who are ill-prepared for the spiritual and psychological consequences of entering combat. Add to this the fact that combat is becoming increasingly intermingled with the ordinary civilian world, and the young person must come to grips with consciously trying to set straight this imbalance of modern warfare. That's part of what you write. That's intriguing stuff.
Well, you know, it occurred to me that entering into combat is such an extreme experience. It really, to me, is on the same level as, and in fact, it could even be the dark side of the same coin as a mystical experience. Mm-hmm. Because the mystics can't communicate what they experienced either, and a combat veteran can't communicate it. And you are asking 19-year-olds to take on the role of a god, which is the taking of life, or a sacrificial god, sacrificing your own life for other people. And then, and they've been raised their entire life, thou shalt not kill. We're a basically Judeo-Christian culture, and we inculcate in our young those sorts of ideals, which is highly appropriate. And then suddenly, for a year or two, it's like, go ahead, and your job is to kill people. And then suddenly, back you come, and if they're lucky, and this is increasingly problematical, find themselves flipping burgers at McDonald's after having sort of come down from the mountain. And how does a 19-year-old try to reintegrate that kind of an experience? Especially in a culture where we have, I refer to it as sort of a code of silence about even talking about this experience. So I think what would be helpful is if, I wrote this book, the quote in the beginning of the book, if I can remember it exactly, but it's from Bismarck, which is that any fool can learn from their own mistakes. It's the wise person that learns from other people's mistakes. And I had hoped that in writing honestly about, where I think I got it right, but where I think I got it wrong, that a young person entering into the military service, and I'm no pacifist, I'm a Marine, and I'm very proud of it, that they at least will go in there with their eyes open. I don't want romantics doing this. And we have a grave disservice, not only because we don't really prepare our young for what's going to face them, but we even do false advertising. Join the military and go to college and learn a new skill. Come on. Join the military and do your country's killing. That's what we're doing here. Yeah, let's get honest.
And yet you write that killing has some kind of relationship, as you studied it, to creativity. Yeah. That it's, what did Jung call it, the dark side of creativity?
Well, I think that what I was saying is that, people think that the opposite of war is peace. And I don't actually believe that. I mean, peace is, in fact, just unfortunately, a mythical political state of being that hardly are ever found I don't think it's ever been found in the world. But war is a destructive force that we are part of.
Yes.
And so the opposite of it is the creativity and the building force. And see, we have control over that. We can all as individuals create. We can all as individuals make a difference that way. We don't have to do world peace because in war we do destruction. And one of the things I talk about is it's really fun. And that's the one thing we have to cop to. It's like, how often have you seen the little kid build the sandcastle and then have a blast kicking it over? It's in us.
And not silently either.
No, squealing with joy.
Yeah. Wow. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
One of the most wonderful things about what is it like to go to war is its candor and its honesty. And when we come back, we're going to make a case in point when we return.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
What is it like to go to war? By Karl Marlantes. That's the book we're talking about. It's published by Atlantic Monthly Press. And a gentleman by the name of Sebastian Junger, is that how we say that?
Yes.
Said in part about this book, Karl Marlantes has written a staggeringly beautiful book on combat, what it feels like, what the consequences are, and above all, what society must do to understand it. In my eyes, he has become the preeminent literary voice on war of our generation. He's a natural storyteller and a deeply profound thinker who not only illuminates war for civilians but also offers a kind of spiritual guidance to veterans themselves. As this generation of warriors comes home, they will be enormously helped by what Marlantes has written. I'm sure he will literally save lives. That's more than high praise.
No, it's quite humbling. I mean, he's a great writer himself, and to have that kind of praise from Junger is, I'm going like, wow. Now hope we can live up to that.
Well, let's get to your writing on the matter of killing,
mm-hmm.
and what you might call the hangover from doing it. And it's on page 47 there.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Could you share that with us, please?
Sure. So ask the now 20-year-old combat veteran at the gas station how he felt about killing someone. His probable angry answer, if he's honest, not an effing thing. Ask him when he's 60, and if he's not too drunk to answer, it might come out very differently, but only by luck of circumstance. Who was there to help him with the feelings during those 4 long decades after he came home from war? It is critical for young people who return from combat that someone is there to help them before they turn to drugs, alcohol, and suicide. We cannot expect normal 18-year-olds to kill someone and contain it in a healthy way. They must be helped to sort out what will be healthy grief about taking a life because it is part of the sorrow of war. The drugs, alcohol, and suicides are ways of avoiding guilt and fear of grief. Grief itself is a healthy response.
And how many of veterans from Vietnam do you think agree with that or have even heard it? The notion that is a healthy grief.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not part of, the VA and I certainly don't look at the statistics, but of my friends, I would say that some of them understand that, and quite frankly, some of them avoid it because you often hear about, well, I don't want to go there; it's going to be painful. And I think what they mean is it's going to rack them with sorrow. And our culture shores us up against feelings of all kinds. It's just part of our, Puritan culture, and that's the way the body heals. I think it's through expressing grief that the body is able to finally get itself going again.
Yeah, and that's why I would suppose that there are so many grieving rituals in the various religions of the world, so
Yes.
that people and a society can get through it.
Right. And let's face it, our current culture has become predominantly secular, and and we've left behind, in fact, some of the more what I might call superstitious or fairy tale aspects of religion. I like to laugh. I remember Father Deese coming into the locker room when I was playing football in high school and praying that we'd beat North Catholic, and I was thinking to myself, but North Catholic's priest is in there praying that they're going to beat us, and we've kind of left that behind. But more primitive societies were protected by that. They really did believe that God was on their side. And we believed that probably well up until the middle of the 20th century. Well, we tend to be in wars right now with people who still do believe it. They have whether it's misguided or not, a psychological buffer against things that we've left behind, and we have not replaced it. We have to figure out how we're going to do this.
One of the scariest and most interesting parts of the book has to do with lying, particularly as you experienced it in the Vietnam War.
Right.
I mean, it's that section is bizarre. I mean, but I mean, you lay out the various reasons at the different levels of command that individuals have a good reason to lie.
Right.
Mostly getting ahead.
Right.
But I mean, the way 1.5 kill becomes, 6.5 when by the time it gets out of Saigon, it's amazing.
Well, I mean, I have fun with that, but it's part of what I consider to be just screwy measurement systems. I ran a corporation, and I understand motivation of employees. Whatever measurement system you put in place, the managers will manage to that because that's how they get rewarded. And in the case in Vietnam, there was no measurement system as in World War II, where my father, my uncles could say, well, first we hit Tarawa, and then we hit, Saipan, and then we hit Iwo Jima, and we got closer and closer to Japan. We could measure our progress. And
each one of those individual victories got us closer to the ultimate victory.
Ultimate goal.
Unseating the bad boy in Japan.
Tojo or Hitler.
Yeah.
When Vietnam came around, not only were there lies about, getting us involved. I mean, the whole Gulf of Tonkin thing. Not only did we learn later that by 1965, certain people administration had already figured it was not going to be winnable, we also got into a measurement system that I consider to be just downright silly, called the body count, because there was no other. How did you know you won? And so they began to measure this thing called body count. Well, people began to manage to it. There's two things wrong with it. One is that if you're involved in a body count measurement, it's fundamentally immoral. You're not there to kill people. You're there to stop other people from hurting your people.
It's all turned upside down.
Yes.
It's weirder and weirder. Wars do come to an end. Warriors come home. To what? How are they received? One warrior's experience when we return.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email JimFosterCoc@gmail.com.
Yes, this is Jim Foster. What is it like to go to war? By Karl Marlantes. That's our book. It's published by Atlantic Monthly Press. And right from the trenches, we get an endorsement. This is by Gunnery Sergeant Terrence and D'Alessandro, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, the U.S. Marine Corps. To say that this book is brilliant is an understatement. Marlantes is the absolute master of taking the psyche of the combat veteran and translating it into words that the civilian or non-veteran can understand. I have read many, many books on war. This is the first time that I've ever read exactly what the combat veteran thinks and feels. Nothing I have ever read before has hit home in my heart like this book. As I said, that's right from the inside.
Yes, I mean, somehow, he had read Matterhorn, and he was over there fighting, actively engaged. He's an active duty Marine, and he had contacted me because of Matterhorn, and then when I got this book finished, I just sent it
right out. Yeah.
And,
good move.
yeah, and he read it and he loved it, and so I asked him. I said, "Will you do a blurb?" He said, "Sure." So that was really nice.
And he's still an active duty
Marine?
No,
he's a career Marine. Yeah, he's active duty right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, before we let you go, I'd like you to share a bit more of the way you write with our folks out there in Radio Land. And page 67, is that what we agreed to?
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
The next time you're with a group of around 40 people, perhaps at a meeting, maybe on a city bus, imagine them all with the lean, hard bodies of 18 to 20-year-old men. Arm them all with automatic rifles, rockets, and grenades. Add 3 machine guns and a supply of bullets backed by the industrial might of America. Understand that these armed young men will do, without question, absolutely anything you ask. Now add the power to call in jet aircraft that shake the earth with engine noise alone and can spew jellied fire over entire football fields, make craters big enough to block freeways, and fire lead so thick and fast that it would pulp the body of a cow in an eye blink. Add to this artillery with shells as thick as your waist and naval gunfire with shells the weight of Volkswagens, and you're 21 or 22 and immortal, and no one will ever ask a single question? This is just a platoon commander, the lowest ranking officer in an infantry unit, which itself has the lowest level of sophistication in weaponry. In today's combat environment, this lowly lieutenant can call in bombs from B-52s flying so high they are unseen, and Tomahawk missiles fired from some 500 miles at sea, all with the accuracy of a rifle at 200 yards. Try to get into this frame of mind. Try because the world needs you to. If you say you can't, I will counter by saying you're tragically cut off from a very deep part of yourself. Tragic for all of us, not just you. I loved this power. I love it still, and it scares the hell out of me. For those who don't know it, but at least suspect they might love it, I have hope. For those who won't know it, those I fear. They are the ones who will kill a commie for Christ, even an 8-year-old. They are the ones who will spit on a veteran, even a medic. They are the ones who will send letter bombs to bankers, even the fathers of small children. They are the ones who will kill their sons' spirits and drive this immense energy so deep in their sons that when it returns, as it must, it will be in such a great rage that the gates of reason will be shattered like a boot going through a pane of glass. When I returned from the war, I would wake up at night trying to understand how I, this person who did want to be a good and decent person, and who really tried, could at the same time love an activity that hurt people so much.
Let's talk about your own homecoming, which you cover in the penultimate chapter of the book, title of which is Home.
Well, I came back from the Vietnam War, and our homecoming was painful. The kids got blamed for the foreign policy, and I think it was just a mistake. Frankly, we've made progress, huge progress. We don't do that anymore, and I think that that's been a major improvement. But because it's so difficult to re-enter, even with today, the being clapped at airports, there's still this sense of isolation that veterans feel that is so difficult to overcome. And a large part of the reason for this isolation is not just the fact that they've gone off and had an experience that you don't understand and they can't explain, but there's this unconscious psychological position that we in this country have that we're not involved. I hear it all the time. Well, they volunteered. And the fact of the matter is, we pay our taxes, and we're the teachers that teach the scientists that make the weapons, and we're the farmers that grow the food that feed the scientists that feed the military. And it's this huge interlocking chain of events, the end of which is somebody pulls the trigger. If we felt that we were part of the whole process, as we are, I think that returning veterans would feel like, oh, we're all on the same team here, and it would be a lot easier to reintegrate. So society's unconscious attitude about they did it is, in fact, one of the major impediments to reintegrating.
And if we were conscious of interconnectedness, then we wouldn't move and change our seats on a subway train. Or as you had the experience of somebody actually spitting at you. I
did. The image of being spit on is the actual amount of time that happened, I'm quite sure is very small. I happened to be one of the lucky ones that had it happen to him. But it became a metaphor for the way that our veterans were returned. And so it has become sort of more of a symbol than the amount of time it actually happened. I mean, none of my friends were spit on. But it was a good metaphor for the way we were received.
Unfortunately, I think you're right.
Yes.
Fortunately, we now have a book of yours called What It Is Like to Go to War, a book that has the power to change a lot of those things. It's a book everybody should own. It's by Karl Marlantes. And this has been Conversation on the Coast. I'm Jim Foster.
Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at Jim Foster COC and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.